The Mexican army says it has killed the leader of the country's most powerful drug cartel. February 22, 2026, 7:20 a.m. The most wanted drug lord in the world gets taken out in a pre-dawn raid, and it's all because his girlfriend couldn't stay away. Neo Osagera Cervantes, El Mencho, leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, worth $10 million dead or alive, gets tracked down through his romantic partner, who led authorities straight to his hideout. As we're about to break down exactly how the CIA, FBI, and a new joint task force used predator drones, girlfriend surveillance, and a detailed target package to end the reign of Mexico's most dangerous cartel boss. El Mencho wasn't just any drug lord. This man controlled the most violent cartel in Mexico, moved billions in drugs, and had evaded capture for over a decade. His Jalisco New Generation cartel had more firepower than some armies, and he personally had a 400-man security detail protecting him 24/7. But here's what really went down. The same thing that kept him alive for years. His paranoia and isolation got flipped against him when love made him vulnerable. To understand how a girlfriend's visit brought down the king of Mexican cartels, we got to go back to where it all started. Let's rewind to 1966, Michoacan, Mexico. When Ignacio Ruben Oera Cervantes was born into poverty in a rural farming community where opportunities were limited and the drug trade offered the only real money. Growing up, young Neo saw how the local marijuana plantations provided jobs and cash that legitimate work never could. By the 1980s, El Mencho was working as a guard for marijuana plantations, learning the business from the ground up. But here's where it gets interesting. He wasn't just some random kid trying to make it in the drug game. He was connected to one of the most important families in the region through a relationship that would define his entire criminal career. El Mencho grew up in the same rural community as Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, and more importantly, he was tight with her brothers who were already deep in the drug trade. The Gonzalez Valencia family wasn't playing around. They had established smuggling routes into the United States and were moving serious weight. El Mencho worked as muscle for their operations, in protecting their marijuana crops and learning how the business really worked. This connection to Rosalinda's family wasn't just business, it was personal. El Mencho and Rosalinda had known each other since they were kids, and as they got older, their relationship became romantic. But this wasn't just some neighborhood love story. This was a strategic alliance that would help build one of Mexico's most powerful criminal empires. In the early 1990s, our Eleno followed Rosalinda's brothers to California, where they were expanding their drug operations. He wasn't just along for the ride. He was learning the American side of the business, understanding how to move product across borders and establish distribution networks. But in 1992, everything changed. El Mencho got arrested in California on drug charges and ended up doing time in a U.S. federal prison. After serving his sentence, he got deported back to Mexico in the mid-1990s. Now, here's where things get wild. Instead of laying low, El Mencho joined the local police force in Michoacan. Think about that for a second. A deported drug trafficker becomes a cop. But this wasn't about going straight. This was about learning how law enforcement operated from the inside. Eleno was studying his future enemies, understanding their tactics, their weaknesses, their communication systems. In 1996, El Mencho married Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia in a ceremony that was more than just a wedding. It was the formal merger of two criminal organizations. According to sources, this marriage strengthened El Mencho's relationship with Rosalinda's clan and gave him access to their established smuggling networks and financial resources. Rosalinda wasn't just a wife, she was a full partner in the business. She helped manage the financial side of operations, laundering money through legitimate businesses and maintaining the family's wealth. Her brothers continued to be El Mencho's closest associates, and together they started expanding beyond marijuana into more profitable drugs like cocaine and methamphetamines. But El Mencho's ambitions went way beyond what Rosalinda's family had built. By the early 2000s, he was making moves to create his own organization. He started recruiting heavily, building a private army of sicarios and establishing his own territory. The man who started as muscle for his in-laws was positioning himself to become the boss of bosses. Then, in 2010, everything exploded. El Mencho officially founded the Jalisco New Generation cartel, breaking away from other organizations and declaring war on anyone who stood in his way. This wasn't just another drug gang. This was a military-style organization with advanced weapons, sophisticated communication systems, and a level of violence that shocked even other cartels. By 2015, El Mencho had built the CJNG into Mexico's most feared criminal organization. We're talking about a cartel with over 5,000 active members, and operations in 35 Mexican states and international networks spanning from Asia to Europe. But here's what made Eleno different from other cartel leaders. His level of paranoia and security was off the charts. This man never slept in the same place twice. He had a 400-man security detail armed with military-grade weapons including .050 caliber machine guns and rocket-propelled grenades. His communications were so secure that Mexican and U.S. authorities couldn't intercept them. Then he moved between between safe houses in Jalisco, Michoacan, Colima, and Nayarit, always staying one step ahead of law enforcement. But in 2015, something happened that showed just how powerful Eleno had become. When Mexican military forces tried to capture him in Jalisco, his men shot down a military helicopter with a rocket launcher, killing several soldiers. Eleno escaped, but the message was clear. He had more firepower than the government. The U.S. put a $10 million bounty on his head, making him one of the most wanted men in the world. The DEA, FBI, and CIA all had task forces dedicated to tracking him down, but every operation failed. El Mencho was like a ghost. There were no recent photos of him, no confirmed sightings, no electronic communications to trace. However, there was one weakness in Eleno's armor that would eventually bring him down: his health and his need for companionship. Around 2018, the intelligence sources started reporting that Eleno was suffering from kidney failure. This wasn't just any health problem. Kidney disease requires regular dialysis treatment, which meant Eleno couldn't move around as freely as before. While other cartel leaders would never sleep in the same place twice, Eleno's medical condition was limiting his movements. In July 2020, Mexican authorities discovered that Eleno had built his own private hospital in LLC Watt, a community in Villa Purification, Jalisco. This wasn't just a clinic. It was a full medical facility equipped specifically to treat his kidney problems and other health issues. The hospital was located in a wooded area surrounded by dirt roads and protected by his security forces. But even with his own medical facility, Eleno's condition was getting worse. By 2025, sources familiar with his activities said he needed daily dialysis treatments, which severely restricted his ability to move between safe houses. Even the man who had evaded capture for over a decade was becoming a prisoner of his own failing health. Now, let's talk about the women who played crucial roles in Eleno's empire. Because this story isn't just about one girlfriend. It's about how Eleno used romantic relationships to build and maintain his criminal organization. First, there was Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, his wife since 1996. Rosalinda wasn't just married to Eleno. She was a co-founder of his criminal empire. Her family's connections gave Eleno his start in the drug trade, and she continued to manage the financial operations of the CJNG throughout their marriage. She handled money, laundering through legitimate businesses, and maintained the family's wealth across multiple countries. But here's what most people don't know. Eleno didn't limit himself to one woman. Like many powerful cartel leaders, he maintained relationships with multiple women who served different purposes in his organization. And some were romantic partners, others were business associates, and some were both. These women weren't just arm candy. They were operational assets. They could move freely without attracting the same attention as Eleno's male associates. They could carry messages, transport money, and maintain communication between different parts of his organization. In the world of Mexican cartels, women often serve as the invisible network that keeps everything connected. But this network of women would also become Eleno's greatest vulnerability. While his male associates knew to avoid phones, change vehicles frequently, and use counter-surveillance techniques, his romantic partners needed different levels of access and communication. They needed to know where he was, when he would be available, and how to reach him safely. One woman in particular would become the key to his downfall. Though Mexican authorities haven't released her full name publicly, the sources suggest she was Guadalupe Moreno Correo, a woman who had been in a relationship with Eleno for several years. Unlike his wife Rosalinda, who was deeply embedded in the business side of the cartel, this girlfriend represented something different. She was his escape from the constant pressure and paranoia of running a criminal empire. But maintaining this relationship required Eleno to break his own security protocols. He had to stay in predictable locations for extended periods. He had to allow people to know his whereabouts in advance. And most dangerously, he had to trust other people to arrange and facilitate these meetings. By 2025, the pressure on Eleno was reaching a breaking point. The United States had created a new task force specifically designed to take down Mexican cartel leaders, and Eleno was their #1 target. On January 15, 2026, the U.S. established the Joint Interagency Task Force, counter-cartel based out of Fort Hua, Arizona, just 15 miles north of the Mexican border. This wasn't just another law enforcement operation. This was a military intelligence fusion center staffed by 300 personnel from the CIA, FBI, NSA, DIA, DEA, ICE, and U.S. Northern Command. Their mission was simple: identify cartel networks, track funding channels, map organizational structures, and locate cartel leaders. Eleno was at the very top of their target list. Under President Trump's second term, CIA Director John Ratcliffe had expanded a drone surveillance program that began under Biden. Unarmed Predator drones, the same ones used to hunt terrorists in Iraq and Afghanistan, were now flying over Mexico, gathering intelligence on cartel operations. These weren't just any drones. Predator drones can fly at 20,000 feet for up to 14 hours, completely invisible and silent from the ground. They're equipped with high-resolution cameras that can read license plates from 4 miles away, and thermal imaging that can track individual people through buildings. For weeks, these drones had been flying over Jalisco, Michoacan, Colima, and Nayarit, Eleno's known areas of operation. They were mapping his security networks, identifying his safe houses, and most importantly, tracking the movements of people in his inner circle. But the breakthrough came when U.S. intelligence agencies identified something Mencho thought was secure: the trusted associate who arranged meetings with his girlfriend. Here's where Mencho's girlfriend sealed his fate. And this is the part that shows how love can make even the most paranoid criminal vulnerable. For months, Mexican military intelligence had been tracking a man they identified as a trusted associate of one of Mencho's romantic partners. This wasn't the girlfriend herself. It was someone who worked for her, probably a driver or bodyguard who arranged her meetings with Mencho. Think about the security implications here. Mencho couldn't just call his girlfriend and say, "Meet me at this location." That would require phones, which could be intercepted. He couldn't have her drive directly to his safe houses, because that would create a traceable pattern. So, he used an intermediary, someone who could communicate with the girlfriend, arrange the logistics, and escort her to secret meetings. But this system designed to protect Mencho created a vulnerability that U.S. and Mexican intelligence could exploit. The trusted associate had to communicate somehow, maybe through encrypted phones, maybe through coded messages, maybe through other intermediaries. But somewhere in that chain of communication, there was a signal that intelligence agencies could detect and track. On February 20th, 2026, that signal lit up. The Mexican military investigators detected that the trusted associate was moving, and they realized what was happening. He was escorting Mencho's girlfriend to a meeting. This was the moment they had been waiting for. After years of failed operations, they finally had a way to track Mencho in real time. They followed the associate as he drove the girlfriend from somewhere in the Guadalajara area to Talpa, a mountainous region about 80 miles south of the city. Talpa isn't just any location. It's a rural area with limited access roads surrounded by mountains and forests. It's the kind of place where Mencho could feel secure, where his security forces could control the approaches, and where he could relax his guard just enough to spend time with his girlfriend. The associate drove her to a specific property. Sources suggest it was near the Talpa Country Club, a gated community where wealthy Mexicans have vacation homes. The exact address was reportedly house number 39, a secluded property that Mencho had been using as a safe house. But here's the critical mistake. The girlfriend's visit wasn't just a quick meeting. She stayed overnight. From Friday evening, February 20th through Saturday, February 21st, she was at the property with Mencho. And the entire time, a Predator drone was circling overhead at 20,000 feet, invisible and silent, recording everything. While Mencho thought he was having a romantic weekend away from the pressures of running a cartel, of the most sophisticated surveillance operation in the history of the drug war was unfolding above his head. The Predator drone flying at 20,000 feet wasn't just watching, it was collecting what intelligence agencies call a pattern of life. Every person who entered or left the property, every vehicle that approached, every movement in the surrounding area was being recorded and analyzed in real time. But the drone wasn't working alone. The CIA and FBI were providing what's called all-source intelligence to their Mexican counterparts. This means they were combining drone surveillance with electronic intercepts, human intelligence, and signals intelligence to build a complete picture of Mencho's location and security setup. According to sources familiar with the operation, U.S. intelligence agencies compiled what's known as a detailed target package for the Mexican government. This wasn't just Mencho's location. It was a complete operational plan that included exact GPS coordinates of the safe house, real-time intelligence on Mencho's security detail, the number and positioning of guards around the property, building schematics showing entrances, exits, and escape routes, the best time to strike when security would be lowest, helicopter landing zones for Mexican special forces, air support requirements for the operation. Now, this target package represented years of intelligence gathering condensed into a single operational plan. Mencho was described by a former U.S. official as very high, if not at the top of America's target list in Mexico. On Saturday, February 21st, the girlfriend left the property. Mexican Defense Minister Ricardo Tvila later confirmed that surveillance teams watched her depart, but critically, Mencho remained behind with his security detail. This was the moment Mexican and U.S. intelligence had been waiting for. Mencho was in a known location. His security was reduced because he thought the meeting was over, and his kidney disease meant he couldn't move quickly if he needed to escape. The girlfriend had unknowingly provided the final piece of intelligence needed to locate and eliminate the most wanted man in Mexico. Her romantic visit had given authorities a 24-hour window to plan and execute an operation that had been years in the making. February 22nd, 2026, 7:20 a.m. After years of failed attempts, hundreds of millions of dollars in resources, and countless hours of surveillance, the moment had finally arrived. Mexican special forces supported by helicopter gunships and guided by real-time intelligence from U.S. Predator drones descended on the safe house in Tlalpa, where Mencho had spent his final night. But even in his weakened state, even caught off guard by the surprise attack, Elmeno wasn't going down without a fight. His remaining security detail opened fire on the approaching helicopters and ground forces, turning the quiet mountain property into a war zone. The firefight was intense but brief. Elmeno's men were outgunned and outnumbered, facing Mexican special forces who had been planning this operation for days with precise intelligence about their positions and capabilities. When the shooting stopped, Nematio Ruben Ogua Cervantes, Elman II, leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the most wanted man in Mexico, was dead. The man who had evaded capture for over a decade, who had built a criminal empire worth billions of dollars, who had commanded thousands of sicarios and controlled territory across multiple states, had been brought down by the one thing he couldn't control: his need for human connection. A Mexican defense minister, Ricardo Trail, held a press conference the following Monday, confirming Elmeno's death and revealing the key details of how he was tracked down: the girlfriend's visit, the surveillance of her trusted associate, the drone operation, the target package. It all came together in a single, devastating operation. Let's be real about what happened here. Elmeno's girlfriend got him killed, and there's no way around that fact. For over a decade, this man had survived by following strict security protocols: no phones, no predictable patterns, constant movement between safe houses, and a 400-man security detail. He had evaded the Mexican military, the DEA, the FBI, and the CIA through pure paranoia and discipline. But love made him vulnerable. His need to maintain a romantic relationship outside of his marriage to Rosalinda required him to break every security rule that had kept him alive. The girlfriend, whether she knew it or not, became the weak link in Elmeno's security chain. Her visits required advanced planning, predictable locations, and reduced security. Her trusted associate had to communicate with multiple people to arrange these meetings, creating electronic and human intelligence opportunities for law enforcement. Most critically, her overnight stay on February 20th to 21st, 2026, gave U.S. and Mexican intelligence a 24-hour window to plan and execute the operation that killed him. If she had just visited for a few hours and left, Elmeno might have moved to a different location before authorities could act. But she stayed the night. She gave them time to position the Predator drone, compile the target package, coordinate between U.S. and Mexican forces, and plan the pre-dawn raid that ended his life. Now, we don't know if the girlfriend was working with authorities. There's no evidence she was a deliberate informant, but her actions, whether intentional or not, provided the intelligence that led directly to El Mencho's death. In the world of high-level organized crime, this kind of operational security failure is often fatal. Elmeno knew this. He had probably ordered the deaths of other cartel members who made similar mistakes. But when it came to his own romantic needs, he couldn't maintain the same discipline. The irony is that El Mencho's wife, Rosalinda, who was deeply involved in the cartel's operations, never created this kind of security risk. Or she understood the business, knew the protocols, and operated within the organization's security framework. But the girlfriend represented something different, a connection to a normal life that Elmeno craved but couldn't safely maintain. In the end, that craving for normal, for human connection outside the brutal world of cartel leadership, is what got Elmeno killed. His girlfriend's visit gave authorities the opportunity they had been waiting years for, and they didn't waste it. The death of Elmeno sent shockwaves through the Mexican underworld and marked a major victory for U.S.-Mexico cooperation in the drug war. But it also revealed just how sophisticated modern law enforcement operations have become. The Joint Interagency Task Force Counter-Cartel, established just 1 month before Elmeno's death, had proven that combining military intelligence, CIA resources, FBI expertise, and advanced surveillance technology could take down even the most protected cartel leaders. The Predator drone program, expanded under CIA Director John Ratcliffe, showed that the same technology used to hunt terrorists in the Middle East could be effectively deployed against drug cartels in Mexico. Flying at 20,000 feet, these drones are invisible and silent from the ground, capable of tracking targets for days or weeks without detection. But perhaps most importantly, Elmeno's death demonstrated that even the most paranoid criminals have vulnerabilities that can be exploited. His kidney disease limited his mobility, his need for medical treatment created predictable patterns, and his romantic relationships required security compromises that ultimately proved fatal. The girlfriend who led authorities to Elmeno disappeared from public view after his death. Mexican authorities haven't revealed whether she was questioned, whether she provided additional intelligence, or whether she's been placed in protective custody. In the dangerous world of Mexican cartels, or being connected to a dead leader, especially one who was betrayed, can be a death sentence. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel didn't collapse with Elmeno's death, but it was severely weakened. His sons and other family members have tried to maintain control, but without his leadership and paranoid security measures, the organization has become more vulnerable to both law enforcement operations and attacks from rival cartels. For U.S. law enforcement, Elmeno's death represented vindication of a new approach to fighting Mexican cartels, one that combines traditional investigative techniques with military-grade surveillance technology and unprecedented intelligence sharing between agencies. The operation that killed Elmeno cost millions millions of dollars and involved hundreds of personnel from multiple agencies across 2 countries. But it also eliminated a criminal leader whose organization was responsible for thousands of deaths and billions of dollars in drug trafficking. Most importantly, it sent a message to other cartel leaders. No matter how careful you are, no matter how many guards you have, no matter how sophisticated your security measures, love can make you vulnerable. And in the modern surveillance state, that vulnerability can be fatal. El Mencho's girlfriend thought she was just visiting her lover for a romantic weekend. Instead, she provided the intelligence that ended the reign of Mexico's most dangerous cartel leader. In the brutal mathematics of the drug war, that's how empires fall. Not through massive battles or dramatic confrontations, but through small human moments that create opportunities for those who are watching and waiting. The king of Mexican cartels was brought down by the oldest weakness in the world, the need for love and human connection. And in 2026, that need proved more dangerous than any rival cartel or law enforcement operation he had ever faced.